Hey up everyone. Today I'm going to share with you a very long-term review of the Suzuki DL650 Vstrom. It isn't a short review, so I have included timestamps below to help you find the bits you want quickly. It is worth watching to the end though, so stick around. I've been a DL650 owner now for over 15 years, so I think I have plenty of experience to give you an honest opinion. I've owned plenty of other bikes before and during this period, and have honestly tried to find a replacement for the V-strom for over 10 years now. I'm still looking. As well as the motorcycles I've purchased to try and replace the V-strom, I have tested many others in many different environments, and I've put a lot of miles on them. So I feel that I can provide you with a comprehensive and honest review of the bike's capabilities, its advantages and its disadvantages. This review refers to a 2007 Series 1 V-strom with no ABS, but most of the comments are equally applicable to the later models. The Suzuki DL650 V-strom is without doubt the most versatile, reliable and comfortable motorcycle I have ever known. It can handle most riding situations you can throw at it, and I lovingly call it my general dog's body. It might not do any one thing as well as certain other motorcycles, but it does everything pretty damn well. I've even thrashed it around Cadwell Park on a few occasions. You can see my first track day in the video linked above. I will say, the DL1000 is also a great bike. The 650 is just better at everything other than high-speed motorway runs in my opinion. And personally, I try to avoid them whenever I can. When it needs to, the DL650 will handle motorways perfectly well too. This difference shows on the second-hand market. The DL650s hold their price much better than the DL1000 do. I would say that come the apocalypse there will probably be 3 bikes that survive. The Kawasaki KLR650, the Suzuki DR650 and the trusty DL650 V-strom. Before I go on, can I remind you to subscribe to the channel if you find it all interesting. So, discussing some of the standout features of the DL650. First we come to the engine. The bike is powered by a 645cc V-twin engine that's derived from the original SV650 engine. It really does deserve the title bomb-proof in the SV650, and the V-strom uses a detuned version, so it really is close to indestructible. It delivers smooth and torquey power throughout the whole rev range. You can ride it in a really relaxed way, short shifting and making the most of the lazy power at lower revs, or it's equally at home if you push it up the rev range and use the slick gearbox to keep it at peak power. It produces about 69 horsepower and 47 pound-foot of torque, which is more than enough for most riding situations and certainly enough to lose your licence. It pulls strongly even when 2 up and fully loaded, and believe me, I have loaded it up a lot of times. It doesn't struggle. It's very fuel efficient too. You can get around 50 to 55 miles to the gallon on average, and add the 25 litre fuel tank on the Series 1. And you'll get a comfortable 250 mile range from the full tank, so it's a great choice for long distance touring. Next we come to the handling. Despite its weight and size, the V-strom feels nimble and responsive once you get up to speed. It's especially good on tight twisty roads, which is mainly thanks to its well balanced chassis. The standard suspension is well tuned for normal riding, and does have preload adjustment front and rear, which makes a big difference if you carry a pillion sometimes. The front is adjusted with easy access winding adjusters on the fork tops, and the rear has a fantastic easy to adjust remote preload adjuster. The V-strom has twin disc brakes on the front and a single on the rear. The front is strong and progressive, whereas the rear is fairly gentle, which makes trail braking easy and controllable. The V-strom's not a sports bike, but it is remarkably nimble for such a big motorcycle. It's an enjoyable, predictable, neutral ride with great stable handling, and it tracks well in the corners even when trail braking. Next, we come to comfort. Now this is one area where the V-strom excels the most. The bike's neutral riding position and comfortable seat make it easy to ride all day, whether you're touring, riding off-road or playing on back roads at the weekend. The bike also has a multi-position screen that can be raised or lowered to provide better wind protection for the rider, regardless of their height. Pillion grab rails are solid and well positioned, and the easily adjustable suspension means a quick stop and a few turns of the preload knob, and you can soften the suspension for off-road or stiffen it up for the highways when needed. Then we come to versatility. The V-strom is equally at home on long highway rides, through towns and seas, on twisty mountain roads or even off-road trails. Its rugged build quality and reliability make it a great choice for those who like to explore the roads less travelled. But the easily adjustable preload front and rear do make a difference. There are ways to upgrade the suspension too. This can be done relatively cheaply for anyone who's capable with their spanners. The torquey V-twin engine gives you great low end power and smooth acceleration, but it revs out really well too, so you get the best of both worlds. You don't need to push a DL650 into corners to have fun, but when you do, it surprises many riders. The bike's neutral riding position also makes it easy to control compared to most bikes of this size. Reliability comes next on my list, and we've already mentioned it, but the DL650 Vstrom is known for its rock-solid reliability. Regular maintenance and oil changes are all that's required to keep the bike running smoothly. The Vstrom has a reputation for being a workhorse, and it can handle long-distance travel better than most. Last year I did a 6,000 mile trip through 7 countries in Europe without encountering any mechanical problems. I used the Scott oiler and only had to adjust the chain once, and that was it. Although yes, it is right to check the valve clearances at 25k intervals, I haven't actually adjusted them yet. And I do ride the bike hard at times. It has also probably done more first and second gear miles than most V-stroms, as I do take it off-road regularly. Next we have that off-road capability. Well, while the V-strom's not a dirt bike and doesn't have the off-road credentials of some of its more modern alternatives, it will do okay off-road. The bike's smooth, torquey engine is perfect for light-duty trail riding, but the suspension isn't designed for aggressive off-road riding. Ground clearance can be a limiting factor, but despite bouncing off many rocks, I'm yet to bend anything terminally, and I do ride 2 up off-road. Mine spent a lot of time off-road. I have taken it through rivers and up tracks it probably had no right to do. There are times I've had to accept defeat, but that's all part of the fun. You can see some of the lanes in the video linked above. The sound of the V-strom has a pretty unique tone. It isn't like the harsh sound of a Ducati V-twin, and it revs much higher than most V-twins. The engine produces a satisfying growl that sounds great under acceleration. The bike's heavy, standard exhaust system can easily be replaced too, with either a full system or you can just replace the heavy silencer. If you do replace the central section, make sure you refit the O2 sensor, as if you don't, it won't run right. Various manufacturers make alternative exhaust systems, but GPR in Italy and MTC in the UK both make great systems that will last you as long as the bike. I can also attest that MTC do honour their lifetime guarantee. Aftermarket parts are everywhere too. Remember, the better a bike sells, the more customers aftermarket manufacturers have to aim their products at. This bike has been in production so long now that there are a huge amount of aftermarket parts and accessories available. You can customise it to your own needs and make it fit your riding style. Although there are differences in the models and some parts aren't interchangeable, most are, and there are many options to get the perfect parts you need. Higher screens, lowered peg kits, custom seats and many other items are listed fairly cheaply in most online stores, and any shops can get hold of them too. You will hear below some of the modifications I've done. Some are fairly standard mods that most riders will do and are relatively easy. Some are more complicated, but there are always plenty of V-strom riders out there ready to help. And that brings us to the community. One of the things that you will find is that there are few motorcycle communities more welcoming than the V-strom community, whether that's on the road, on the many independently started forums, or the different groups of the various social media sites. If you have a problem, chances are someone has had it before and will tell you the solution with no fuss. But those problems are rare, to be honest. Now, let's talk about some of the drawbacks of the V-strom. First is the styling. The bike styling may not be for everyone. It has been called an ugly duckling and many other things. I used to say people who bought a V-strom had a sense of humour because they'll never win any beauty contests. They have a no-nonsense, rugged appearance, a utilitarian look that some riders may find uninspiring. The point is, you don't buy a V-strom to stand at the side of the road looking good. You buy them to get anywhere you want, quickly and comfortably, with no breakdown worries. It really is that simple for me. Then we have the suspension. The bike's standard suspension isn't fantastic. Some will say it's a bit soft for more aggressive riding, and it could do with a little more travel to make it better off-road. However, it is more than adequate for most light-duty trail riding, and learning to use the basic preload system properly makes a lot of difference. There are also plenty of ways to improve the standard setup, which brings us to some of the modifications I have done. I am a tinkerer, and I know what I like, so there have been various mods done over the years. I luckily got a 2007 DL650X, so as standard it had engine bars and a bash plate fitted. The same ones are still fitted 15 years later, although they have been hammered back into shape a few times. I've never felt the need to replace them. Depending on use, I do sometimes go one tooth down on the front sprocket, but that happens less these days. First, we have the fork brace. The Cosmo fork brace is a must-have and was my first purchase after getting the V-strom. It makes the front end feel much more planted and minimises any flex in the front forks. Next, we have the braided lines. I always use braided lines, so again, this was a mod I did early on. The standard lines can get spongy, especially in hot weather. I ran 2 independent lines to the front calipers to get rid of the crossover hose too. I've made various changes to the suspension over time. First, I fitted Yukugor progressive springs. This was the first attempt at making serious improvements to the suspension. The Yukugor progressive front springs make a huge difference, especially when you're carrying a passenger. They stop the front end bottoming out as much off the road too. The rear is still the same standard damper, but with the improved spring, and again, it's just stronger than the standard. The front has had more work done to it now too. After many years of adjustment and changes to the front fork setup, I got the biggest improvement by simply swapping the cartridge fork internals from the DL1000 to the 650. You have to keep the original DL650 fork legs because of the speedo drive, but the stanchions and internals can easily be swapped over. I tried it with the heavy duty Yukugor springs with a longer spacer, and it was great for faster runs or touring, but not so good off-road. Using the standard DL1000 springs with a longer preload spacer and leaving the cartridge standard was the combination that worked best for most of my riding. I just swap the springs if I'm going off on tour. The bike was always going to be used for touring, so I fitted a Givi Monarchy pannier rack and top box. Other brands may be better, but the rack and panniers I got are still perfectly serviceable 15 years later. Then we come to the exhaust system. The first system I got on to replace the stupidly heavy standard system was a GPR full system. It was made really well and very light, but after a few years and plenty of sliding down green lanes, I decided I wanted a stainless silencer, and after speaking to Martin at MTC Exhaust in Cheshire, I had him make me one to exactly the spec I wanted. The central cat is removed, and the silencer is a very long, wide-bore stainless steel twin-outlet unit. It creates a lot of internal volume in the silencer, so there's plenty of back pressure without having to run dB killers or baffles. Do be careful to make sure that any system you buy has the fitting for the O2 sensor. Without it, the bike will just not run right. Next came the stainless steel radiator and oil cooler guards. As I began to ride more and more off-road, these just became a must. I ride a lot in Derbyshire, and the limestone can be sharp, so protecting the oil cooler and radiator just made sense. An auxiliary power relay and 12-volt outlet came next. Jamie Jones, who's well known in the UK V-strom community, built me a relay that tees into the brake light feed, so it comes on and off automatically with the ignition. A 12-volt waterproof marine grade outlet was mounted on the front dash too. I prefer my bars straighter than the standard V-strom bars, and I use a braced pair of MX style bars on 1-inch risers. It just suits me better than the originals and gives me better control. I also have two small and branded projector lights mounted on the front crash bars. Again, as a bike used for touring and used all year round, heated grips were a must. I use R&G because spares are easy to get if needed, but there are plenty of other brands. I found a much cheaper version of the Bikebusters handguards with adjustable mounts and replaceable plastic on eBay. They're great, with a steel bar running through the whole unit for maximum strength. They've lasted me about 10 years now, despite many impacts. And lastly, I eventually built a homemade sat-nav bar. I literally went through some old frame material I had lying around and cut an old section of subframe that slots neatly above the clocks and is well protected behind the screen. In overall, I have to recommend the Suzuki DL650 Vstrom, but I'm sure that's not a surprise. It really is a great, versatile and reliable motorcycle that can handle a wide range of riding situations. Its smooth power delivery, excellent handling and comfortable riding position make it a joy to ride on long trips, while its off-road capabilities and ease of modifications make it a great choice for anyone who just likes to explore. Personally, I don't see enough improvements over the years to warrant the extra weight and smaller fuel tank on the newer models, but the year really isn't that important. The Series 2 and later do a little more miles to the gallon, so you get a similar range to the older ones. Whichever DL650 you buy, you won't be disappointed. Since I've had the Vstrom, I've owned and tested many other adventure bikes, from a Kawasaki KLR 600 to a Ducati Multistrada Enduro. My comments on comparisons will follow in a moment. There's a whole other article about the best bang for your buck adventure bike for a more detailed breakdown. First, the Ducati Multistrada Enduro. It was a fantastic bike, and better than the Vstrom in so many ways, but far too heavy, and certainly not worth the extra cost to me. Even in low power mode, the extra power was actually a hindrance off-road. The KTM 1090 Adventure. I loved how good this bike was off-road, but the Vstrom was just more comfortable, more economical, and better for a pillion, so it just wasn't worth the extra money in the end. The Kawasaki KLE 500. The Vstrom was far better on highways and far more comfortable touring. The KLE was slightly better off-road, but as an all-rounder, the Vstrom just wins. The Kajiva Navigator. Now, this bike was a hoot to ride, and a real hooligan, but off-road it was such a handful, and again, comfort and economy make the Vstrom just a better all-rounder. The Kawasaki KLR 600, linked in the video above, is one of my all-time favourite bikes, much better off-road than the Vstrom, but for comfort, low maintenance and torque touring, the Vstrom wins hands down. The Triumph Tiger 900 Rally had far too complicated electronics for me. I ended up hating the menu system very quickly, so any advantages it had were lost. The Yamaha Tenere 700 is another fantastic bike, but I'm sorry Yamaha, can you please sort that terrible seat out? For one, it's uncomfortable, for two, it's torturous. Stupid exhaust hanger too. The Honda CRF 1000 is probably the motorcycle that came closest to persuading me to buy anything new, but the extra weight was enough to sway me in the end. Also, the newer one seem to have electronics designed by the same idiot Triumph employed on the 900 Rally too. My V-strom is ridden all year round, and it's looking a little worse for wear these days. It gets treated with ACF 50 in winter, and I do use a Scott oiler. You can see in the pictures, I haven't even had the side panel I replaced sprayed yet. It was cracked on a rock while we were away in Europe and replaced with one a friend had. I will get it resprayed at some point. So, there you have it. Maybe in another 15 years I'll do another review on the DL650 Vstrom again. I'm sure it will still be running. I hope you found the information helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll be happy to respond. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon below to make sure you see the next videos. Ride free, everyone!